Dobrý večer, good evening. A little personal note here. On special, very special occasions like this, I hope I will be up to the job. I don't intend to hijack the conversation. We have a story here. I noticed the two men the very moment I came here. Friendly, smiling, ready to crack a joke. Only later I learned of their personal tragedies. In the world of tribal wars, the two, Bassam Aramin and Rami Elhanan, Palestinian and Israeli, they should be hating each other guts. Yet we see them side by side, each other calling each other brother. And then there is the Irish writer Colum McCann with no easy task. Do justice to Bassam and Rami's story. What can we do? How can we react to the pain of others? Pain beyond imagination. How to tell their story. Please welcome to the talk Bassam Aramin, Rami Elhanan, and Colum McCann. Now, Rami and Bassam, we're here because of your daughters, and your daughters brought you together. Why don't you tell first the story of your daughters?
Well, thank you. Good evening, everyone. I really wish we wouldn't be here. I really wish that 26 years ago nothing will happen and I could go on with my life in my graphic design studio with my happy bubble. But you do not control your fate. And some mysterious hand puts you where it puts you and force you to open your eyes, to open your heart, and to look for the reasons. My daughter was killed in a suicide bombing in Jerusalem on the 4th of September 1997, 26 years ago. And a year later, I joined the Parent Circle, the Families Forum, the Israeli-Palestinian Organization of Bereaved Families. And I have started a journey towards what is called the other side, which was completely hidden from me. I was a victim of a brainwashing system of the Israeli education, which hid the other side from me, which demonized the other side. And the first meeting with the Palestinian bereaved families 25 years ago changed my life, opened my eyes, opened my heart, and made me create a journey towards him, towards his language, towards his culture, towards his history and narrative, towards his food, towards his everything. A journey which is still continuing today, redefining my very existence as a Jew, as an Israeli, and as a human being. And for that I'm grateful because I'm a different person now, because my life was changed completely, because I have a reason to get out of bed in the morning, look in the eyes of young children, look in the eyes of people like you, and tell them that we are not doomed. It is not our destiny to keep on killing each other in this holy land of ours. And we can change it. And we can change once and for all this endless cycle of violence and revenge and retaliation. And the only way is simply by talking to each other, because it will not stop unless we talk. Thank you.
In fact, I think that you are very lucky to live in this place those days, because at least you have a safe place. You live in peace. You have your own security, which is not the case in Palestine. There is no safe place for ourselves, our kids. You cannot protect yourself, and sometimes if you survive, it's only by chance, which is not a normal life. Nothing worse than to lose a son or a daughter. So I lost my 10 years old daughter Abir in 2007 to an Israeli border police in front of her school from a distance of 15 to 20 meters in her head from the back. She fell down, and 2 days later she passed away in Hadassah hospital, where Smadar, Rami's daughter, born and died also. Between Abir and Smadar, it's 10 years, but we don't know each other. But we know the killer of our daughters. It's the same killer, the same enemy who took off the lives of our daughters. It's the Israeli occupation. If there is no occupation, we don't need to kill each other. We don't need to fight each other. It's a long story, but Rami always said that luckily that we are human beings, we can use our heads. More than 100 years we are trying to kill each other, to defeat each other. We will never give up. But the result up today, Israel is not safe. And it will never be safe. Palestine is not free. It will never be free as long as we continue to kill each other. We understand that we have the right to exist, both of us. No one will disappear. And we can live together. And this is the evidence that we are together. Thank you very much.
Colum, you met the two gentlemen, I believe, 2015, November, in Israel?
Yeah. No, in West Bank.
In West Bank. I just wonder what sort of trust was there between the three of you, because you're not a documentarist, and you offered them to write a story as a novel. So how did it go?
So every time I hear them talk, I understand again how important it is. You know, we walked around today and we went for lunch, and then we joke with each other, and we have become friends. But then we get up on stage, and they get a chance to tell even just a tiny portion of their stories, and I realize how immensely important this moment becomes. And then I remember how I met them, and how I just thought casually I was going to meet two people, you know, in Beit Jala, in an office block. I walked in that afternoon. It was a rainy Thursday afternoon. It was 4 o'clock. The dark was coming down, and I thought, okay, you know, I really want to get back to the American Colony Hotel and, you know, talk with people. But I'm going to listen to these two men. And within half an hour, my world was blown open, because they gave me a chance to enter into their grief, but also their friendship, and also their seriousness, and then in a profound way, the way that they want to change the world, because nothing is static for them. I realized that it was not finished. And one of the most profound things about them telling stories about their daughters, about themselves, and about their cultures was that it was not finished. In fact, it was constantly unfinished. And so for me to come in to write a novel, they had to, you know, they had to trust me. So I said to them, "Can I write a book?" And they said yes. I said, "You don't understand, because I'm a novelist." And I said, "I'm going to make stuff up." And they said, "Yes. What's the big deal?" And I pushed and I pushed and I pushed. And then finally they said to me something really profound, which was that, you know, we've lost so much. If you can even capture a tiny portion of what we have lost, then you will have done enough for us. And so that was that became my job. And then we became friends. And I do realize, like, we haven't seen each other in 3.5 years, and we spent the last 2 days together. I do realize at this very moment that we could walk around, we can have fun, we can have breakfast together, we can have lunch together, we can laugh and joke, but there's something profoundly human, decent and proper that goes on when they talk about the necessity for understanding one another.
Maybe two things from the Czech point of view. I heard you speaking to Czech teenagers, and I was surprised when you said that sometimes you only traveled with your passport of Israel, and you, Bassam, you didn't get a permission to travel, so you had only one man to tell the story of both. And the second thing, if I may say, you're a secular Jew, and the first time you met a Palestinian and talked to them, it was when you were, how old were you?
47.
So it just escapes my imagination that until that time you didn't talk to any Palestinian. Were you surprised, Bassam, that? Yeah.
Well, most of the time he gets permits. We do slalom in the air and we get the permits. I have to get him back to the checkpoint by 10 o'clock in the evening to put him back in his cage. But usually we have a very good system that enables it. But the very sight of us standing in front of kids, this is something which is much more difficult and complicated. When we give a lecture in Israeli or Palestinian high school, they are not as polite as you are, usually. For most of them, it's the first time ever in their life they see an Israeli and a Palestinian together, which are not fighting each other, which are calling each other brother, which are not putting their pain on the table, trying to compare whose pain is bigger, who started what, who's to blame. And it's like walking into the open mouth of an active volcano. The earth is shaking. And there is a sea of blood between these two nations, a lot of anger. And for them, we are something very new, peculiar, unbearable, sometimes makes them very angry. But this earthquake creates the crack in the wall that we are looking for. The crack in the wall that enables a little light to come in, a little light can drive away a lot of darkness. The fact is that no one can listen to us and remain the same. The fact is that they stand in line after the meeting and ask forgiveness and ask questions. The power of this storytelling process. Two young kids, we are talking to 17, 18 years old kids. Next year they will be in the army or will join one of the organizations, the resistance organizations. And it's a chance to make a little difference. And it's a great privilege for us.
Bassam, I'm not asking you whether you talked to somebody of Israeli origin because you were in prison from 17 to 20 years of age. And you had prison guards, Israelis, and it's described in Colum's book. So it might come as a surprise to readers that Holocaust plays such an important role in your story. Can you tell us something about it, please?
In fact, sometimes I consider myself a Palestinian who survived the Holocaust. After I discovered it, it was by chance. We don't believe in the Holocaust. We think it's a big lie. We never learned anything about it. In fact, I discovered later that we are the victim of the victims of the Holocaust. We paid the price of this crime that we never committed and we never heard about it. In fact, I watched a movie about the Holocaust in jail. It was by chance. And always I said, like, I want to enjoy seeing this movie to see how this big Hitler tortured them, killed them, arrest them, because I am in their jails. Then after a few minutes, I found myself crying, get sympathy with those people, and I get very angry for them even because they didn't fight back, because I am a fighter, so I want everyone to be a fighter against injustice. But I start to look for this, the truth, if it's really happened or it's just a movie, which pushed me after many years. Before 12 years, I make my master degree about the Holocaust in Bradford University in the UK. If you talk about the prison guard, you know, we know the Israelis more than they know us because they are our occupiers. We need to know them. It was amazing for me when Rami said at the age of 47, I never meet a Palestinian. Then I understand that it's very easy not to see the Palestinians or not to see the others at all, which happened many times through the bloody history here in Europe. You understand me. So this prison guard, in fact, he want to challenge me because he don't believe. No, he asked me that we are settlers, the Palestinians, and I get crazy. We are the Palestinian settlers. You are the settlers. And he said, are you people? I said, yes, we are the Palestinian people. So prove that. I don't know. We are here 2,000 years, and you, I don't know. I never heard a Palestinian said, I came from Czechoslovakia, or I came from Russia, or I come from America. Always we are there. In fact, I start to teach myself who are the Palestinians, so I can know how to argue with this jailer. In fact, after a few months, we became a very close friends, and he get to understand that we are not occupiers, we are not settlers. For me, I was just a kid, and the occupation create from me a fighter or a warrior. And I met him after I get, in fact, released in jail after many years in 2009. When I went with my brother Rami, he was unfortunately, he didn't act, he go through a stroke 1 year before, but he recognized me because he saved my life once in jail when they come to beat me. So I go to say to him, thank you in the personal level, and after a few months he passed away. You know, I believe that our struggle as Palestinians, which sometimes very violent, and we always want to justify this violent, but we became, with the Israelis, a very brutal societies. We lost our humanity. We cannot see the other side as human beings. So when you see the other side as human beings and recognize your own humanity, this is the beginning of the end of the conflict. And this is what happened to me, not with this jailer. In fact, when I met the combatants for peace, it took me like 37 years, not 47 years, at least 10 years before you, to discover the humanity and the nobility of your enemy.
Colum, we are all male panel, 4 men here. I just wondered whether you've met Rami's and Bassam's wives.
Yeah.
And what are they like?
How many wives do you have? How many wives do you have?
Be careful.
Look, so I went away, and after meeting them, and I said, you know, can I write about your lives? And they said yes. And I had a huge responsibility then, because I knew that I would have to dwell in their lives for a little while. And that meant getting to know them on all sorts of levels. First of all, I was really confused about Israel and Palestine. But I grew up in Ireland, right? And my mum is from Northern Ireland. And I was also really confused about Ireland. And I realized that it's a privileged position to be confused. And I really mean that. It's we don't acknowledge that, but it's an extraordinary position to be confused. But I knew that I would have to try to understand the general principles, the history, and all of those things, but also that I would have to go and spend some time with them. So, I went and traveled on Rami's motorbike. I walked with this man through checkpoints. I went to meet both their families, and yes, I met both of their wonderful wives, and they're extraordinary people. What was interesting about them is that they didn't want to tell the story in the same way that their husbands wanted to tell the story, but they told another side of the story that was really interesting to me, because I understood that this whole thing was kaleidoscopic. There's not one single truth. There's never one such thing as a single truth. And if Nurit didn't want to talk to me about what was going on, that was just as profound, if not more profound, than her talking about her pain. And if Salwa, just wanted to accept me into her home and not talk about anything political, that was just as profound as spending time with these incredible men. And the further I went into it, the more complex it became, the more I had to acknowledge that I did not know, and the more I accepted the notion that, wow, it was actually kind of wonderful to embrace those words, I don't know. But can I also say, they were also incredibly gracious with me, both of them. And then we did get a chance to be together. Do you remember that evening with the Narrative 4 group in the American Colony Hotel, when I saw Salwa, Nurit, and you guys together? And it was an extraordinary meeting of minds. But you should always let the husband talk about their wives themselves. So.
So what do your wives tell you when you leave so often?
In fact, she still loves me,
Good.
but she don't
applause.
like me very much. It's very difficult. It's a long story, in fact, but since we create combatants for peace, for me it was to discover the enemy. The Jewish people, the chosen people who occupied us. I need to understand who's those people. So most of my time was in Israel with Rami and his friends. We have 6 kids. She always asked me to stay more with our kids. So I said, what I am doing, it's for my children. Of course, she didn't understand that. After our tragedy, she said to me, continue doing what you are doing for our kids. It's a personal responsibility. I believe this is the only way to protect my children. Only I don't want to protect the Palestinian people and the Israeli people. I want to protect my other 5 kids. And this is the way to be more determined, to raise up our voice, to achieve peace for myself, for my kids, and for my grandsons and daughters. Rami, the same. And she's a big supporter, to be honest. I want to say something. I only trust Mr. Colum McCann only because he's Irish. That's it.
How do you mean? What's the...
We love them, the Irish people.
The Irish.
When he asked us to make, to write our story, I said, yeah, it's okay, because many people wrote about us, documentaries, videos, whatever. But he said, you don't understand, I'm a novelist. I said, no, I understand, it's okay. In fact, I don't understand. So I discovered it after 5 years. I don't know this man. Then I discovered that he's very famous, and he's a genius, and he's a professor. I said, oh my God, forgive me.
Can I say, one of the best nights that I had actually one of the best nights of my life was sitting outside with Bassam and Salwa under the Jericho stars outside their house, by the fire, singing songs. Now, I sang some Irish songs. I do sing, but I can't. It's a big, important distinction. But this man can sing, and he's actually known as Abu Arab, who's a famous singer, and he just might sing at some stage this evening. But to be with him and his wife, to see their house, to see everything that was going on under the sort of the blaze of Jericho stars was an incredible thing. Similarly, with Rami, to be with him in his house, and just to be allowed into their house was to be allowed into an extraordinary, it was an extraordinary unlocking of keys in many ways. Rami.
Colum, when Bassam said that he trusted Irish, well, I meant how long has there been peace in Northern Ireland? 17 years?
25 years.
25 years.
25 years this April. Yeah.
So is it sort of a thing as a hope for Palestine and Israel?
After 800 years of fighting.
Yeah. That's a great question. Can I also compliment you for your question about the wives, because we have never been asked that on stage before, and I think it's really important to talk about women. When you talk about Northern Ireland and the peace process in Northern Ireland, it was women who brought that about. The Women's Coalition, women who said we have had enough. Of course, it became a very male thing about thumping your chest and doing all these things, and a lot of men got the kudos for the peace process, and a lot of great people were involved. But there was a huge power that came from the women who were involved. Now, it's been 25 years, but the most extraordinary thing that I heard from both of these men about what's happening in Israel and Palestine was, well, can you talk, Rami, about there being a German embassy in Tel Aviv and a...
No, that's his...
All right, okay. Bassam, talk about the fact that there is an embassy in different parts of the world.
Like when people ask us, do you believe that one day you will have peace? And always I said that in our case, we are not the first and unfortunately not the last conflict in the world. But when we look back, where is the Romans today? The conflict in America, in Canada, in Australia, South Africa, Northern Ireland, Colombia. And always I said that the Palestinians didn't kill 6 million Israelis. And the Israelis didn't kill 6 million Palestinians.
Yet.
Until now. And there is a German ambassador in Tel Aviv, but there is an Israeli ambassador in Berlin. 3 years after the Holocaust, 3 years after 6 million victims. So the level of hatred and blood between us, it didn't arrive to this level. We need only a brave leader to take us towards the future and release us from the very painful past. We can talk about the Holocaust another 75 years, in spite it's over. We can talk about the Nakba, which continue up to date, another 75 years. But the result, it's more victims, more blood, and more pain. And one day we will have peace agreement, but how much blood we need for those politicians, how much blood we need to end the Israeli occupation, we don't know. But in one day, we will live in peace.
Rami, I understand that you were asked once to go together to Germany, which you didn't find very attractive, right? That was my impression from that story.
People always ask me, how can you change yourself? And I don't think that people can change themselves. But from my own experience, I'm a son of a Holocaust survivor. My late father was an Auschwitz graduate. And I took the Holocaust very, very seriously. I mean, I was a Holocaust fan. I read all the books, I saw all the movies, I was really into it. I was angry with people who were not standing still when the siren went on the Holocaust Memorial Day. I was really hooked to it. And I had many, after we became famous, and I got many invitations to come to Germany, and I said, I cannot. I really cannot go over there. I cannot even imagine myself listening to this language. It will be like nails on a glass. And I said politely no, and life went on until in 2014 there was the massacre in Gaza, and Bassam and myself were participating in the demonstrations against the war. And he looked at me and said, "Brother, I need to ask you a favor." I said, "Okay, whatever you want, you know." And he said, "I need you to come with me to Germany." And I said already yes. So I started sleeping at nights, and I was dreaming about this unbearable experience. What will I do if I'll find myself in a German terminal, and the speakers will go, "Achtung, Achtung." What will I do if some German in uniform will ask me for papers? It was very complicated.
What do you do when you step in the shower?
And it was very complicated for me, but I promised him to come, so I came. It was 2014, for the first time ever in my life. I was sure that every person standing in front of me is an ex-Nazi or a son of a Nazi or will be Nazi or have been Nazi, and my brain was blocked. And I always talk about it, the walls. You know, we are living in a society with 8 meters concrete walls. This is part of our existence, and I always tell the kids when I give a lecture that walls can be torn down. The Berlin Wall, the other walls, they are only concrete. The walls in the head are mightier and much more difficult to tear down. And gradually, they treated us with respect. They accepted us and host us almost exactly as you host us. I mean, with a lot of respect and politeness and charm, and everything was functional and exactly as was planned. And then I started to see the golden plates on the sidewalks of Berlin. And I saw the buses coming to Dachau with young children. And I saw million refugees being observed by these horrible people. And my walls gradually went down. Ever since then, I've been to Germany 5 times more. And today, Germany is a light in the dark.
We'll talk about your visit to Terezin also, but I would like to ask Colum, what did you do with that story as a narrator? Because it's so easy to get emotional, to be finger pointing, blaming, maybe to blackmail emotionally. So what did you do?
That's another profound question. First of all, I just knew that I wanted to tell this story. The lie about writers is that we're smart and that we know what we're doing. We don't know what we're doing. We never really know what we're doing. And in fact, the best stuff comes from the profound sort of mystery of not knowing. But I just wanted to sort of try to inhabit what was going on, and I just had a vague idea. I had a shape, which was called Apeirogon, which is a shape with a countably infinite number of sides. It was almost the first word of the novel that I had. And I knew I wanted it to be fractured, because I knew I wanted to tell a story that was going to be different. I didn't want to tell a story about an Israeli and a Palestinian, and they reach across the wall and they offer each other fruit and everything is cool and kumbaya. That was not something that I wanted to do. And I realized that it was a dangerous story to write. I also realized that I'm a middle-aged Irishman living in New York, and that I knew, probably close to nothing about what was going on. But I also knew that the most important thing is not 1948 or 67 or 93 or any. What the most important thing is the ticking of the human heart, and if I could get in to somehow reach in that rib cage and understand what was going on, I would have a story to tell that people maybe would listen to, because I knew that I was so profoundly changed by having listened to them, that if I could do the same thing or even just a portion of the same thing, I would do it. And you mentioned a really interesting word, like narrator. I had no idea who was narrating this book, who was telling the story. I wrote it for 2 full years, not knowing. And I would wake up in the mornings and think, who the hell is telling the story? I don't know, but I have to put this stuff down. I have to put this stuff down. And then I came to a realization, a number of realizations that we shared together with each other, but I came to the realization that it was the reader who was telling the book. And that sounds like it's either the smartest thing I ever realized in my life or the stupidest thing. Because, of course, you, the reader, are the narrator of every single book. But I had never thought of this before. And then when it became a conscious thing for me, then it became profound, and then I was able to finish the book. But I knew I had a big responsibility to what was absolutely true about their stories. And then I also had a responsibility to my reader, so that she or he could, be confused, be joyous, be sad, and then inhabit their stories, and then come out at the far end and say, okay, what are we going to do about it now?
Why did you decide to tell it into 1,000 pieces like Scheherazade?
Sometimes I think, and I wish I had a beautiful answer that
You had.
Well, I do have a beautiful answer now, but at the beginning I didn't know. At the beginning I just knew, fuck this. All I want to do is write it in fragmented pieces. Then I started to think, oh, maybe it's because, there was a bombing and it was all about fragments. And then I began to think, well, these fragments are coming together. And maybe because it's about the trajectory of a rubber bullet. And then the further I went in and I started to examine their stories, I realized that Bassam and Rami were telling the stories of their daughters because they wanted their daughters to be alive. And my God, in my office that day, like the violins went off and I said, it's Scheherazade. That's exactly what it is. And all these fragments that I'm writing, I shouldn't write 100 of them or 250 or 300 of them. I had to write 1,001 of them. Now, that's it was actually a very difficult thing to. I don't like writers talking about how difficult stuff was, because it's much more difficult to live. It's much more difficult to be a cop. It's much more difficult to do all these other things. But for me, this was a really difficult book to get the music and the balance of it right. And I worked and worked and worked. But there were mornings that I would wake up, and I swear to God, I felt that I had a beer on one shoulder and Smedar on the other shoulder. And somehow they were sort of whispering to me and say, okay, go this direction. And I would write things that I sort of didn't even know. So a lot of the time, I was just going with the mystery.
So Rami and Bassam, Colum was writing your story. So what was it like? It took 5 years. Did you get to oversee it, sort of? Did you get to talk into it? So did you have a word in what he was doing?
We didn't take it seriously at the beginning. We are...
Speak about yourself.
You know, we are old warriors. We heard it all. We've seen it all. There are so many interviews and films and documentaries, and he was another one. Then he started sending us fractions of the drafts. And Bassam said, "You are my representative. You will read it in 10 minutes if it's okay." And I really, when I got to the difficult parts, I couldn't read it. I said, "Okay." And I told him, "It's your book. It's not ours. You can write whatever you like. You get permission to do whatever you want." And
Rami, what were the difficult parts? When you were mentioning the difficult parts,
yeah,
what were they?
the detailed description of the death of our daughters, detailed to the very last painful detail, which we told him, but it's always painful. My wife, for example, cannot read it at all, and it's a very powerful part of the book, because people need to know what it is. I mean, how it happened. But the first time I really read the book was on the plane 3.5 years ago on my way to New York for the launching of this book. And I held it in my hand and I couldn't take it off my hands. And I was mesmerized. I was hooked. I was magnetized. I was... the feelings were running inside me in a way that I never anticipated. I mean, it was... On one hand, it was like listening to myself being recorded, a very strange and unfamiliar voice, reading things about myself which I never told anyone ever, and gradually I dived in. And this idea of the 1001 stories, and this idea of explaining why we carry this burden 5 times a day sometimes, telling the same story over and over again, which gives us a reason to get out of bed in the morning. How was he capable of listening to our pain and describe our pain in a way that I didn't think was possible? In that sense, when I landed in New York, I felt, and I still think so, that I held a masterpiece in my hand.
Can I just say, and that's a beautiful thing to say, but this is important, and I haven't ever said this to people. I sat in my office and I wept because I looked at videos. I had to understand what a suicide bombing was, for instance. I had to go into forensic evidence of what happens to a skull when it gets hit with a rubber bullet, and I wept. I mean, there were times I just put my head on the desk and I wept, and I thought, I can't do this anymore. And then I had to understand that the size of my pain was absolutely nothing in comparison to the pain that they carried. So my responsibility was to their pain, which they had actually, the very first day that I had met them, they had written on a note to me, because I was crying the first time I met them. I thought I was tough, right? I thought I was tough. I could do this, yeah. But the first time I met them, you can ask them. And there was these green napkins on the table, and I'd taken them up and I crumpled them, and then they took another green napkin, and they wrote on it, you know, use the force of your pain, and they both signed their names on it. And I took it home and I put it on my wall. Sadly, I lost it after I finished the book, and maybe that's a metaphor.
We can write it again.
No, because I've used all that, and it was amazing to me to access that, to try to access that, because I wanted other people to understand, but also then I really think this is very important, that these are two of the funniest men that I know. Like, we sit around, we laugh and we have fun, but watch those two together, it's unbelievable. So I also wanted the humor to come through, and the joy, and all of these things to come through. That was my responsibility.
You are both, Bassam and Rami, members of, it's called Parent Circle. You said it was 700 families of Palestinian origin, of Israelis, people who have lost somebody in the conflict. And I just wonder, what do you think of the present moment and the situation with the government in Israel? It doesn't seem to be moving in the same direction as your movement goes. Actually, it's the other way around. It goes against. It's tougher and tougher. What do you think? Can the Parent Circle be sort of a vehicle of a change in a political sense?
It's your department.
Your
It's the Israeli government. You know, for us, for the Palestinians, it's the same government since 1948 up to date. For you, it's more extremist, less extremist, right wing, left wing. For us, it's the same government, the same policy, the same confiscated lands, house demolition. More than 1 million Palestinians entered to the Israeli jail since 1967. But I believe for the first time it became really dangerous for the Israelis, for the Israeli security, for the Israeli so-called democracy. And you can see those protests go on since 6 months against, it's not against the government, the laws, it's for their own privilege, not for the Palestinians. And the roots of this fascism, it's the occupation. And this is what we said. It's the elephant in the room. The Israelis will never feel free until I feel free in Jericho, in Jenin, in Hebron, in Ramallah. Otherwise, we will continue to kill each other forever. We must be free. As I said, we proved that we can live side by side. So this government, determined to put obstacles for the Parent Circle and for other peace organizations, the same minister, the Israelis consider him as a terrorist, a gang leader. Today he is the National Security Advisor, minister. Himself was protesting against us personally in front of the schools with the Israeli flags. He considered us terrorists, and the last month they banned the Parent Circle enter to the Israeli schools that we enter more than 20 years because of this guy. And I said it's mainly against our Israeli brothers and sisters from the Parent Circle. It's not against the Palestinians. For those people, we are not exist. They don't want to see us, but they want to enforce the Israelis, or to shut up the Israelis, in fact.
What does the Israeli part of the story say?
The Parent Circle is a unique organization. It was founded in 1994 by a religious Jewish guy, you know, with a kippah on his head. He lost his son, who was kidnapped and murdered by Hamas. And he saw the demonstrations of bereaved families attacking Yitzhak Rabin in the days of Oslo. And he took the initiative to organize bereaved families from the other side to support Yitzhak Rabin on his way to peace. From a very few families, from a few Israeli and Palestinian families, mainly from Gaza, it became a very powerful organization of about 700 families, Israelis and Palestinians, with one common denominator, which unites us all. We have various political agendas, but one thing unites us: the understanding that we lost our children because of this abnormal situation in which one people is dominating the other. We paid the highest price possible because of the Israeli occupation. And we need to do everything in our power to change it. This is the essence of the parent circle. And if you want to know more about the perfect parent circle, you just go and look theparentcircle.org. You will read many stories like ours. You will see the activities that we do, which is wide range of activities, all designed to put crack in the wall to let the light comes in. And when you get to the end of it, there is a button down below. It says donate. You can push it.
Listening to what Bassam had to say about the Israeli government, it's my...
let me add a few words about the Israeli government, which is not a government. It's a gang of fascists, criminals, starting with the prime minister down the last ministers. I look at it in a very sober way. I think for the first time in the history of Israel, we face the question, what are we? Are we a Jewish state or are we a democratic state? We cannot do both. You cannot define your country by your religion, by your ethnic group. If there are 20% of the population, in fact half of the population, if you look at between the river and the sea, by your ethnicity, this must be addressed. And the miracle that happened during this protest, although they did not mean it, Bassam was right, they are demonstrating in order to keep their privileges. But for the first time, they need to talk about the elephant in the center of the room, about the reason for this ugly situation in which we are. And for the first time, the word occupation is being heard in these demonstrations, which is very good, and I think it's very positive, because we need this showdown to decide what we are, who we are, what we want. I believe we will win in the end.
Listening to both of you, here's my question for Colum. It seems that Apeirogon is more a book on moral imagination than on political advocacy. You're just very hesitant to make any political statements there. But the politics is there, isn't it? So how did you cope with that ambivalence?
We do it for him.
Yeah, yeah. It is a balancing act. It is an act of moral courage. Look, I have to say that I have to acknowledge the fact that I don't know. I don't have anything to say to the political situation. I wish I could say it'd be one state, two states, a federation, confederation, all of these things. But I really have no idea, and I have no right to have any idea. The politics of the human heart is the place where I wanted to go. The ideas of love and pride and pity and sacrifice and violence and envy and greed, all of the and fear, all of these things were important to me. But if I made a statement, it would just, the whole novel would have collapsed on me. I allowed these men beside me to make statements, but ultimately I give the novel to the reader so that they can make the statement. They can walk out of it and they can hate Rami, or they can hate Bassam, or they can hate me. They can think it's ridiculous, or they can think it's sentimental, or they have any number of things that they can think, or they can think it's beautiful. They can think it's profound. They can think it's life-changing. But the most important thing is that I do not make a demand of my reader except that they feel this thing somehow and not be told anything. A writer who tells you things is guilty of a sort of greed on her or his or their part. But a writer who allows you to go in somewhere and make your own mind up about something, that's the sort of stuff that I truly want to read. That's why I love poetry. Poetry allows that sort of thing to happen. A lot of prose and then a lot of essays want to tell you what to think. The real genius comes about when the reader herself is the one who makes up the story.
Talking about readers, it's time for your questions before Abu Arab sings at the end. Would that be fine?
Oh yeah, he's going to sing.
Let's negotiate. Let's negotiate it.
I am not a singer. I am
People
a
say
fighter.
you're fighter, so that makes it.
But before, just 2 words. It's very important. I just remember, like the small minds discuss individuals, and the average minds discuss events, and the great minds discuss ideas. You have a great mind. Thank you.
Bassam, if you say no singing tonight, we're fine with that, but I just sort of believe Colum that he heard something that...
Just because you ask. It's my first time. I'm not...
Bless you.
And I am not like a professional singer. I was singing in jail, and in jail if you sing, you will be punished. You will go to cell. So I spend a lot of days in punishment, isolation. For 3 موال. هلا يا قدس والدمعات هاموا وشعبي في فيا الأرض هاموا افتخر فينا التاريخ وحنا هاموا كثر ما صمد شعبي على العذاب يا هلي 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 Thank you. Do you want me to sing again?